Hello friends, thank you for joining me for this program designed to look at our government, how it works, and the people involved in its operation. My name is Dan Arman, your host. Welcome to I Want to Know, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to the town of North Branford's Fire Chief, William Seward. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me here, Dan.
I really appreciate your time. I know you have a lot to offer, so let's get right into it. Why don't you tell me about you?
Sure.
Your history.
I'm an implant to the town of North Branford. I moved here in 1992. I was born and raised in the city of New Haven. I was educated in the New Haven public school system, graduating from Wilbercross High School in 1973. That kind of gives you my date of birth. So growing up in New Haven was pretty unique as opposed to moving to the town of North Branford. And people may ask, why did I move out of the city and move to the suburbs? And probably a common answer would be for the educational system that we have here in North Branford, and the fact that even though I'm not in the city any longer, I'm still in close proximity. So getting back and forth to work was pretty easy.
Easy commute. So you went to Wilbercross.
I did.
And then where did you go to college?
I went to the University of New Haven. I didn't go to college until after my kids were in high school. And I graduated in 2004 from the University of New Haven with an associate's degree in occupational safety and a bachelor's degree in fire science administration with high honors.
Wow, fantastic. So you were first involved with the New Haven Fire Department, correct?
I was.
And how long were you there?
I entered the New Haven Fire Department in 1978 and retired in 2008. In my career, I served as a firefighter, paramedic, assistant drill master, which is a training officer, and then as the director of training between 1997 and 2008.
Wow, fantastic. And then you came to North Branford as the chief?
I did. Back in 2005, the town of North Branford Fire Department advertised publicly for the position of fire chief. Prior to coming to North Branford, I had some workings with the members and the chief staff of the North Branford Fire Department.
And you were living here by then?
I was actually still in New Haven at the time.
Okay.
I did some training for North Branford and had gotten to know many of the personnel out here. And when the applications were being solicited, it was time for me to look into the future and to submit my name and resume with anticipation of retiring soon from New Haven and taking on a more permanent role as fire chief.
Right, okay. When you came here, it was, and it still remains today, an all-volunteer fire department with the exception of the command structure, correct?
It is. North Branford Fire Department is pretty unique in its way in which we provide services to the community. Unbeknownst to many, the firehouses are not staffed. So if you happen to go there with a medical emergency, for example, there's a red box on the front of the station, and you lift up that receiver. It's connected to the dispatch center. You provide them with information, and they'll make an appropriate dispatch. But 99% of the time, there's nobody in the station.
Okay.
So you drive by, the apparatus are there, but most of the time, there's no body in that station.
Does anybody man the EMS building in Northford?
Yes.
Okay.
So from an organizational structure,
which is complicated, folks.
It is.
So bear with us.
So the North Branford Fire Department is made up of 3 individual fire companies. They're very unique in their organization itself.
Company 1 is in North Branford.
Company 1 is in North Branford. That was established in 1938.
Wow, at the corner of 139 and 80.
It is.
And then Company 2.
Company 2 was established in 1944, and they're located in the center of Northford, near the intersection of Route 22 and Route 17.
And then Company 3?
Company 3 is located up near the Durham line, and they were organized in the late 1950s.
Okay.
And if you look at the configuration of the firehouses and the areas that they protect, we basically look at Company 1 protecting the large portion of North Branford.
Right. The Route 80 corridor.
The Route
if
80
you will.
corridor that goes from the Guilford line to the Branford line to the East Haven line, all the way across Route 22 to the police station. Company 2 picks up at the police station and moves across 22, 17 south and north up until the Allen Crossing, Woods Hill
Right, okay.
area, and then Company 3 picks up to the Durham line
Durham
over to the
line.
Wallingford line.
Okay. And then the EMS facility where we have 3 ambulances?
We do.
Okay. Where is that located?
So the fire department's EMS operation is headquartered out of 1351 Middletown Avenue, across from the schools in the center of Northford, and that houses our 3 ambulances. One is operated full-time. It's staffed by an EMT and a paramedic 24/7. And
So there are people on site there?
There are,
Okay.
provided they're not on call.
Okay, right.
Which they are many times. And the 2 backup ambulances are used for calling crews. So the first call that comes into 911, the on-duty ambulance will respond. And the second call that comes into 911, the dispatcher tones out for a calling crew for what we call ambulance 44. And if another call comes in, another calling crew is toned out for ambulance 42.
And then after that, that's when you rely on mutual aid?
It is.
Okay.
Mutual aid is used if we don't get a response from our volunteers.
Within a certain amount of time or what
Correct.
have you? Okay.
Or more assets are needed.
So when it comes to how is the command structure, well, first of all, since we're dealing with that, maybe you could explain the relationship between the town and its buildings and the fire departments and its apparatus, if you will.
Sure. I said before that our organization is pretty unique, and the same holds true for the organizations of the individual fire companies. So we have a standardized set of rules and regulations for the fire department, and then each company has their own set of bylaws that dictates how organizationally that individual fire company operates. So on an annual basis, the town of North Branford pays a fee for the rental of space in each of the 3 fire companies. On top of that, the town of North Branford also pays for the utilities for those companies as well.
And who insures does the town insure the facility, the building and the apparatus?
So the apparatus belongs to the town, all
Okay.
the equipment belongs to the town, and that is all insured by the town.
Okay. So the town rents the space for the
For a fee,
Okay, for a
which
fee.
is actually pretty nominal.
Oh, sure it is. And that money goes to maintenance of the property, or how does that work? Who handles the maintenance of the properties?
And this is another side of the organization within the individual fire company that makes it pretty unique. So from an organizational structure standpoint, fire departments, whether they're career or professional volunteers, they follow what we call the unity of command, span of control, and we have an organizational structure. So following an organizational chart, I'm the fire chief, and then we have a deputy fire chief, Anthony Esposito, who also serves as a town finance director / treasurer. And then each of the fire companies have a company captain, a first lieutenant, a second lieutenant, and foreman. Foreman is an older term that's used in the fire service, and it allows an individual who is career-oriented to move up the ladder. So
Okay.
they have fire ground authority just as well as the officers. And again, a difference is with the individual fire companies, those officers are voted in by the company
By the
membership.
company, right.
The chief staff has no control over who becomes an officer within the company.
Okay. And while we're discussing this chart, can you describe the fire marshal and deputy fire marshal and what their responsibilities are in all this?
Sure. In Connecticut General statutes state that every municipality must have a fire marshal, or they can share a fire marshal with a contiguous jurisdiction. The fire marshal's office in North Branford is staffed by the fire marshal, Bert Bonnell, and deputy fire marshal, John O'Brien, and they're responsible for carrying out the code responsibilities as outlined in Chapter 541 of the Connecticut General Statutes. And ultimately, it places them with the responsibility to make sure that buildings are fire safe.
Townwide?
Townwide.
Okay.
And that goes from multiple family occupancies, condo complexes, and business occupancies. One thing that people probably don't know is that the fire marshal locally doesn't have any control statutorily over single-family dwellings, except to make sure that new occupancies have appropriate smoke and carbon
I
monoxide
see.
monitors.
So when a property sells, changes hands, the fire marshal is not involved?
On a single-family dwelling, correct?
Right, okay. So when it comes to apparatus, as we were saying, you know, we have 3 ambulances. How many fire trucks do we have?
So we have a total of 18 assets townwide. So
And each company has the different capacities, correct? So I know that company 1, they have a ladder truck, right? And,
Correct.
And yeah, so go ahead, tell me about
So again, the fire service is pretty unique, and that is there's so many laws, regulations, and standards that we
local, state, federal.
that we have to follow and adhere to, not only to maintain continuity of operations, but annually there's requirements that we have to keep up to as well. So the Insurance Services Office, ISO, rates communities, their community protection classification with accordance to the type of apparatus that we have, the apparatus spacing, how far they are from one another, as well as training, local water supply, communications, standard operating procedures, and basically, you know, what we do about fire safety.
And what it boils down to are insurance costs to the town homeowners. Correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a tremendous impact on commercial insurance, and there's some impact on residential fire protection insurance with the ISO rating. So in North Branford, we have an ISO rating that was upgraded in January 2014 to what they call a Class 4 4Y, and that split class has a lot to do with public water supply. So as you know, in about 60% of the town, there's no fire hydrants. Mm-hmm. So that split class is based upon that factor.
And then we have a new tanker up in Northford to accommodate the lack of fire hydrants.
We do. So looking at how the apparatus are spaced and what type of apparatus we operate, take, for example, Company 1. Company 1 has Engine 1, Engine Tanker 11, Tower 1, Rescue 1, Emergency 1, Brush 1, and then we have a rescue boat. So if you look at the town's configuration, the amount of buildings that are 3 stories or more are typically in the North Branford side of town, right. Hence the requirement for an aerial ladder. Not to say that because of the spacing between a home and the street, in Northford or in the upper end of Northford towards the Durham line, an aerial apparatus wouldn't be beneficial, because it absolutely would be.
That's where fire hose lengths come into play.
So yeah, absolutely.
You know,
so,
long driveways.
So going in line with that, on each of our engines, Engine 1 at Company 1, Engine 2 at Station 2, and Engine 3 over at Station 3, each of the engines carry 2,000 feet of 5-inch hose.
All the engines do throughout the town?
The engines do, right. Okay. The engine tankers carry somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 as well, and it all has to do with spacing. And you bring up a good point, because people don't recognize the fact that from the street to their home, tactically,
we can't get a truck up your driveway.
Can pose a real challenge for us.
Right.
And once an apparatus goes up someone's driveway, it places a restriction on what else can get up there. So we instill through training to our drivers and officers that making that first move is very, very critical to a successful or unsuccessful operation.
How the layout ends up on
Correct.
scene, correct.
Once you lay that 5 hose down, you can't move it.
Well, I found that out when I had the pleasure of operating a fire hose, and the pressure is incredible. I mean, you need people behind you, or else you're kind of like a balloon.
It is. It's critical to operate a hose line properly. Firefighters have been seriously injured and killed while operating hose lines.
Can I digress for a second, because I may have skipped over the training that our volunteers and command staff receive and go through. Can you briefly touch on that?
Sure. I'll start off by saying that volunteerism is alive and well in the town of North Branford. It's not so alive and well in many other parts of Connecticut or even in the United States. There's a campaign going on now. You may have seen the clips on television that Connecticut volunteer fire departments are looking for members. And we tend not to have that problem. And it's really strange out here because we have a great volunteer firefighting force. You know, if we look at our numbers, we have about 129 members between the three companies and our EMS station. And 81 are what we call interior firefighters. And that's pretty darn good. So with regards to training, keeping up with the required training of that quantity of personnel presents a unique challenge for us. So back in 2015, the town council was gracious enough to look at some of our challenges and listen to us. And what they actually did is take a recommendation for us, put it into a bond project that allowed us to build a formal training facility down behind Public Works for a cost of about $370,000. And to this day, it provides us with an ability to train in town, not have to go to New Haven, not have to go to Wallingford or other areas where
which is critical. That's when people are off-site then.
Yeah, and you know, while we're off-site, our apparatus and our personnel
are off-site as well.
Aren't here.
Right.
So you know, if I quickly look at in 2017, the number of participants that accessed our training facility was about 760. That totals about 2,700 man hours.
That's incredible.
Of use down there, and it's you know, it's not only great for training, but it's a tremendous motivator to keep our personnel in step with what's required to do today.
Do they do this annually, or certain training is every week? I know, maybe, or every quarter. How does that work?
So, to kind of go along with the training facility, we have a great training staff. Deputy Chief of Training Bob Colangelo, who's a career lieutenant in Wallingford, and Assistant Chief of Training Mark Amatrudo is also a career chief officer. They're charged with training and establishing training schedules for our personnel. So one may ask, well, how do you determine what you need to train in?
Right, right.
So
I suspect the state and the federal government have determined a lot of that, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And you know, if you look at the requirements that we have to meet today, we need to deal with OSHA, we need to deal with ISO, as I said before, and more importantly, the standards that are set forth by the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA. Even though we're not an NFPA state, those standards are enforceable in a court of law as an area norm.
So you have to follow them either way.
So, you know, we're obligated to follow them. Most importantly, OSHA has probably the largest number of laws / regulations that we're obligated to follow on an annual basis. And that kind of sets the stage of what the training criteria is over a year's time for our personnel.
Fantastic. And how often, do other towns use our fire training facility as well?
They do.
Our mutual aid towns use it, correct?
Yes. So, you know, speaking of mutual aid, we have a great working relationship with our contiguous jurisdictions, and that gives us the ability to train with them, but also to provide basic training classes that we reach out to Branford, East Haven, North Haven, Guilford, and Madison, and do that on an annual basis. So, besides our mutual aid partners using the facility, we also welcome the United States military in performing their annual burns.
Okay, fantastic. And so then that leads into the next question I have. How many calls do we get on an annual basis? And how are we trending? Are we trending more, less?
So
is that changing in nature over time?
It does. And for example, in 2017, we had 1,840 runs. And about 80% are EMS related. And that's not only in North Branford, but it's nationwide. 80% of calls that fire departments respond to are calls for emergency medical care. In some of the urban environments, 911 is basically like their primary healthcare provider.
Right, sure.
In North Branford, when somebody calls 911, we know that they're in true need of help, and they're sick or they're injured, and they've reached out to the local asset to provide them with a great first response program. So North Branford is a little unique, and that is we use a tiered response system based upon a protocol that's been in place for a number of years. When 911 is called, a series of questions are asked by the dispatcher, and based upon that dictates what asset responds. So it could be the ambulance by itself, it could be a emergency unit from the fire department, a quick response EMS unit along with the ambulance, or it could be a number of other assets, a rescue company, an engine company along with the ambulance to that type of call.
In the same dispatch center that we have, they dispatch officers as well, correct?
They do.
So they're all emergency calls.
They do. So from an EMS standpoint, the North Branford Police Department is a supplemental first responder. The fire department is the designated first responder. So based upon the availability, police officer also responds along with us.
When it comes to preparedness, I know you folks carry Narcan, correct?
We do.
Could you explain what Narcan is to the
Sure.
people that may not know?
So naloxone, or Narcan for short, is a medication that's given to an individual who has sustained the ill effects of narcotic or opiate abuse. And typically the side effects are the individual has a very decreased breathing pattern to the point where their breathing may stop, and after a given amount of time, their heart may stop as well. So believe it or not, you know, in a 2-year period between 2015 and 2017, Narcan was dispensed 43 times in the town of North Branford.
My.
So North Branford is not unique.
Right.
This is a commonplace in today's environment. And Narcan, no matter what the cost is, it saves lives.
It saves lives,
Saves
sure.
lives. And as I said, you know, the state of Connecticut mandated that first responders carry Narcan just a few years ago.
Okay. Well, luckily. When somebody calls 911, it goes into the dispatch center and it's dispatched to your personnel. Do you have certain technology on the apparatus to, you know, give them their correct address as well? What do you have, iPads and stuff?
Sure. So I can kind of run you through a quick scenario.
Sure.
So from a cell phone, and I'll use that as the first example. From a cell phone, if you dial 911, chances are you're going to hit a local tower, and it's going to be directed into the 911 center located at 264th Road. It'll be answered by the lone dispatcher. They'll ask a series of questions, and they'll dispatch the appropriate response based upon a set of protocols. So if it's a fire, what type of fire it is. If it's a medical emergency, there's a series of questions that the caller may be asked. And, you know, think about yourself in a position where someone's having a heart attack.
Right, sure.
And, you know, impending childbirth is there, and you're getting questioned by a dispatcher. You want help really quick, right?
Now.
So the information that is being sought out by the dispatcher is critical to making sure that they send
The right people.
the right people, right?
And to the right location
Exactly.
as well.
So the way the dispatch happens is that once the information is obtained by the dispatcher, they follow a pre-selected format of in town what companies are going to be dispatched. Using our radio system, they set off a series of tones. Volunteers have a pager, a radio on their waist belt most of the time, and it's on 24/7. And they'll get the tone, and they'll get the response location and what companies are going to be responding. In each station, we have LCD monitors, and as the call is being taken by dispatch, a yellow bar will appear with the address, and then as the call is being dispatched, it'll change colors. So very often, if there's people in the firehouse or in our EMS station, they already know that a call is in queue,
Right.
and it's about to be dispatched, so it kind of gives them a heads up. In the ambulances, in 3 of our fire apparatus, we also have iPads.
Okay.
And the transmission of that alarm data is sent electronically to the iPad through the CAD system. So they have a view of the incident location, if it's an apartment number, the number or the building number. And in addition to that, we have the capability of going to a map view to actually find the GIS location using the town's database.
And that's in all the apparatus?
It's only in 3 of the engines.
I see, okay.
It's expensive.
Yeah, sure.
There's a monthly fee to having these devices, as well as the initial cost of the iPad.
Right.
And So we also, from a fire response standpoint, we can also see where hydrants and water supplies are located. So
Wow, fantastic.
it gives us a real heads up of where we're going to.
And a global view as to what you're going to have on site.
Exactly.
What you could encounter.
And other than, it also serves as a backup to our voice communication. So as we're responding, we have the ability to hit pre-selected buttons and say we're en route or we're on scene or we're available, as opposed to voice communication over the radio system.
And when you're being dispatched, does the dispatch center know that we may need mutual aid, or is it up to you as the chief to call for mutual aid if, heaven forbid, we're in that position?
So from an EMS standpoint, which again, 80% of our work is EMS related, they'll know who's available and who's not. And if a second ambulance is requested to one particular scene, or another call or a third call comes in, they'll know what assets are available. And in a very short period of time, if we don't have personnel responding, they're calling MedCom to send a mutual aid asset.
And plus, you guys are handling, you could have something on the Durham line along with something at Route 80 at the same time. I mean,
it's pretty strange that often when one call comes in, you get a second or maybe even a third call.
Right.
And they kind of come in that type of cluster.
Oh, of course. It's inevitable. So we are running low on time, which I knew we would, because this is what you and your folks do are brilliant, and you save lives. And I'm fascinated by this, and I love the topic. So before we run out of time, I'd like to talk about Fire Ops 101, which is important. Go into that a little bit. This is a program that you're starting, correct?
One thing that we feel is lacking in the town, and that is a good, solid public education to the public of what the fire department does. So, the town provides us with funds to do what we need to do. This year, our budget is about $760,000, and out of that, we have some money that we can earmark to provide public fire education. The International Association of Firefighters started what they call Fire Ops 101 a number of years ago, that is primarily focused on educating our political side of the house on what the fire department does, as well as getting citizens involved, just like a Citizens Police Academy. And it's our goal in fiscal year 19, to put that system in place. We have a great training facility, we have a great training staff, we have great officers that can all lend a hand into educating the public really as to what the fire department does.
So are you going to come up with maybe certain times and dates and a structure that we can reach out to the public and inform them of this, so maybe they can observe, get involved somehow?
We will. We'll use the reversed 911 system that we have available to us in town. We have the fire department's website, which is www.northbamfordfire.com, and that's also hooked to our Twitter site.
Okay.
So that'll be posted as well.
All right, fantastic. I think really we're going to have to come up with other segments of this. Maybe we can do something on site and bring that to the public, on their TV. Public access, I would like to investigate doing that with you as well. In the meantime, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. You guys save lives. And plus you embody what is one of the best aspects of this town, and that it's a sense of community. I'm sure you would agree.
We look at our department as probably one of the best professional volunteer fire departments in the state. That's my perspective.
Yeah, well, I agree with that.
We have a great asset, and that is our personnel.
We don't have much time to talk about your long-term goals, but if you have some short-term goals you'd like to briefly mention.
I think the biggest challenge that lies ahead for this town is sustaining the active membership of the department. If you were to have a career fire department, your budget would increase somewhere between $4 and $7 million.
Yeah, so everybody at home, that's the type of money we save by these people sacrificing their time, investing their time and effort. Okay, well, I'll have to wrap this up. I'd like to thank you so much for your time.
Dan, thank you, and I hope this educates the public just a little bit more.
I hope so too. Thank you all for joining me for another edition of I Want to Know. Please email me with any questions you may have for future episodes at danarmannb@gmail.com. Please help sustain Tucket TV and a donation. As well, please help sustain Tucket Times, which supports our town in print. Thank you very much for viewing this edition of I Want to Know.